On the 25th of March 2017, we celebrate 60 years since the leaders of France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands came together to sign the Treaties of Rome. With this, they laid the foundations out of which the European Union that we know today would emerge.
More than a diplomatic event, the signing of the Treaties of Rome symbolized a new start, a time when Europeans decided that, in the future, they would resolve conflicts through words, not wars or walls.
Without a doubt, the Europe of today would be unrecognizable to those who lived 60 years ago. That's why the celebration of this anniversary is as much about looking back on our achievements as it is about reflecting on our common future.
L'Europe n'a pas été faite, nous avons eu la guerre.
What do we want to stand for in a world that remains fragile and turbulent, despite the drastic improvements of the past 60 years? How can we sustain the achievements we have so painstakingly built up? What will we have to celebrate in 2025 and beyond?
Back in 1947, Europe was just emerging from 2 world wars that killed tens of millions of people and completely devastated much of the continent. From the ashes of war, Europe has today become a haven of peace and stability.
It's also worthwhile remembering that 60 years ago, only 12 of the current member states were democracies. Today, we are 27. This is because courageous men and women across Europe stood up to authoritarian rule, often at tremendous cost and sacrifice. We should not forget this bravery.
European unity did not come easily. The Berlin Wall, erected in 1961, remained standing until 1989 as a symbol of division and disunity. But the continent overcame its divisions. The Eastern European enlargement process that began after the fall of the wall was a clear sign of European solidarity towards those in need.
Solidarity is also crystallized in many different ways in the EU, whether in the form of economic assistance or military cooperation, as we witnessed following the Paris attacks of the 13th of November 2015.
60 years ago, the European economy was still reeling from war and the Great Depression of the 1930s. Since then, European GDP has grown exponentially. Average GDP per capita has almost doubled over the past 20 years alone. The increase has been over tenfold for some of the poorest members.
But the EU is about more than economic growth. It's about shared prosperity and well-being. Our countries are among those with the lowest income inequality and the highest levels of social protection in the world. Did you know that European citizens live more than 8 years longer than the world average?
And well-being doesn't stop there. 60 years ago, women had only recently been awarded the right to vote in many member states. Jobs were segregated by gender and it was still acceptable to lay off a woman when she got pregnant. Today, European women are better off than nearly anywhere else in the world, be it in terms of access to higher education, workforce participation, pay, childcare costs, maternity and paternity rights, or representation in senior jobs.
In spite of all these achievements, we cannot ignore the fact that, today still, Europe continues to face formidable challenges.
We are still recovering from the economic crisis that lasted for the most part of the past decade. We are struggling to come to terms with what people are calling the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and we are faced with global-sized challenges such as climate change, migration, and security.
Many of these trends are not new, and some even offer real opportunities. But what's new is the intensity and acceleration of events.
Many are tempted to try to shut out the problems of the world and revert to nationalist, nativist attitudes. What could be more telling of these difficult times than the United Kingdom's decision to withdraw from the EU on that fateful 23rd of June 2016?
In this context, nothing of what we have achieved with the creation of the European Union can be taken for granted. Modern challenges ignore borders and boundaries, making it difficult for any single nation to master them on their own.
For anyone who doubts the need to work together, it is worth considering how Europe's place in the world is changing. In 1900, Europe accounted for 1/4 of the world population. 40 years from now, our share of global population will be closer to 4%.
Our share of the global economy is also shrinking. By 2050, no single member state of the EU will represent more than 1% of world GDP.
If we want to remain masters of our own destiny and shape a better tomorrow, we need to pull ourselves together. This was exactly the gist of President Juncker's State of the Union speech in September 2016. The 27 European leaders responded to his call for action within days at a meeting in Bratislava when they committed to forging a common vision for the EU's future. Building on this, the Commission has now delivered a landmark white paper on the future of the EU under the leadership of President Juncker. It marks the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Europe. It is the birth certificate of the EU of 27. Above all, the white paper has helped to trigger an open and honest and also overdue debate about our common future. Fast forwarding to 2025, the white paper lays out 5 scenarios, offering potential pathways for the Europe of tomorrow.
In Scenario 1, the EU27 carries on, with business as usual, without any big changes to its existing legal, economic, or institutional framework.
In Scenario 2, the EU27 leaves behind policies such as security and defence to focus exclusively on the single market.
Under Scenario 3, member states who want more do more together, creating coalitions of the willing in specific areas such as defence, internal security or social matters.
In Scenario 4, the EU27 focuses on doing less more efficiently, focusing its resources on selected policy areas where common action achieves greater results, such as the protection of external borders or negotiating trade agreements with third countries.
In Scenario 5, the EU27 decides to do much more together, sharing more power, resources, and decision-making across the board.
Just as the EU's founding fathers dreamt of the world they wanted to build, anchored in peace, democracy, prosperity, and equality, the time has come for us to reflect on our future. Where do we want to be in 2025?
What scenario is most likely to get us there?
And what do you think about the future of Europe?
Join the debate.